I was born the son of a preacher man. I learned a good book in school. Mama taught me about love and manners. Elvis taught me to be cool. Well, it didn't take long till my hair got long. That's risky for a minister's boy. They may not like the way I look, but buddy, I'm the real McCoy. I spent 12 years in a semi-truck, hauling ass up and down the road. I learned the ways of a gypsy man. I got whipped and stripped and bowed. I've now seen the sun from every coast, and I damn sure made some noise. May not like the way I am, but buddy, I'm the real McCoy. There's something about a man that you just can't touch. It burns from the soul inside. You can't hide behind a wallet, or what you wanna call it. It's sitting there in his eyes. Show love. Now I took some pain for my crazy ways. I burned a few bridges too. I've looked the devil square in the face, and I've turned my back on fools. I've been drugged through mud and spit out blood, fought when I've had no choice. They may not like the way I've been, but buddy, I'm the real McCoy. There's something about a man that you just can't touch. It burns from the soul inside. You can't hide behind a wallet, or what you wanna call it. It's sitting there in his eyes. Turn it up now. You see, there's something about a man that you just can't touch. It burns from the soul inside. You can't hide behind a wallet, or what you wanna call it. It's sitting there in his eyes. So when you look in the mirror, it might get clearer. Remember the preacher's boy. Can you say I like the way I am? Buddy, I'm the real McCoy.
That's the real McCoy, and that is GM Blacktop. He is one of our newer artists on the Indie Tunes Records label. He has a CD out there, a whole digital album called Still Real. Check it out. You can find it wherever music is sold on the internet and at IndieTunesRecords.com or IndieTunes.com. That's right. We own both of those domains. And tonight, we're going to talk about networking and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. But before we do, we're going to introduce my special friend. Yes, my special friend and co-host, Sean McKenna of the podcast Bar Stools and Band Talk. Rim Shots with Sean. Here you go.
Howdy. You say special friend, it sounds so funny.
Well, you know, did you come on the special bus tonight or not?
No, I walked.
Oh man. So you and I have been talking about a bunch of stuff back and forth, everything from album covers to photography that artists use for putting their music out there, and then also talking about this whole idea of, why some artists don't support other artists.
Yes, it's a hot topic, not only in the industry, it's a hot topic for me. I've got a group that is almost 20,000 strong, and it comes up every single day about people not going to other people's shows, about people doing things without being supported. and it's a hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, interesting thing. We used to talk about this a lot too. I mean, before I met you, and you know, some of the things are not necessarily excuses, although there are a top number of excuses, and we'll talk about some of those tonight. One of those is if you're a busy musician and you're a working musician, chances are you're going to be playing a gig when your buddy's playing a gig.
That's acceptable.
Yeah, and that's pretty impossible to get out to support somebody. But if you're not gigging and somebody is out gigging, wouldn't it be just wonderful to go out and support them?
Well, yeah, and so I made the mistake a few months ago of I happened to have a rare weekend off, so I said, "Hey, I'm off. Who's playing?" And I started getting all these messages, and I was like, "Uh oh." There's like 20 different bands that are asking me to go see them. I couldn't go, 20 minutes here and whatever. And I missed some people and they got mad at me. And so what I do now is I don't say when I'm off and I'll just show up. But it is very important because, that term during COVID, we're all in this together, became to me such a cheesy thing, but it is true in a sense, right? And you have to support people.
Yeah, some things are definitely pretty cheesy. It's interesting though that we're talking about this. This has been written about by different people out there in the press. Houston Press picked this story up about 6 years ago. It's a little bit old now, but I think a lot of it still stands. And of course, it sort of echoes that whole phrase, "Houston, we got a problem," because this was a unique problem even in Houston, Texas, which is a big city for music, right? I mean, the live music is a big deal down there. Um, there's a bunch of different things that sort of came up there. So excuse number one here, the narrative was, I've heard that before and I've heard for a good while.
Well, yeah, fine. But I've got a saying that I post every time. Just because you're not doing it, don't think other people are doing the same thing. So there's a book that was written, I want to say in like 1920, maybe even sooner, by Napoleon Hill, right? How to Win
Yeah.
Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And you read that book, and I've had people that read it and go, "Well, geez, it's old." Yeah, I guess it's old, but that stuff still works today. It's a no-brainer. You need people to help you succeed. That's it. There's no magic to it. You need people to help you succeed. And if you're not succeeding, it's because people aren't helping you, essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? The best way to get people to help you is you help them. And that's the piece that people miss, right? It's like I had somebody say something to me the other day, and I was just like, "I'm stealing that. I'm sorry. You if you help somebody and they become more successful than you shouldn't be upset about that. You should be happy about that. Reason being is because hopefully they'll pull you along or they'll come back and help some other people. But people, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they get jealous, they get threatened, they get whatever because somebody becomes more successful than them, and it's silly.
Yeah, we had a drummer in our band a while back, who is originally from Germany. And he said it's not like that over in Europe. He said over in Europe, he said bands are very supportive of one another. They sort of have each other's back, and they stick around. Like if there's a multi-band show and you're on first, you stay right until the last man's on stage, kind of thing.
I've seen it all the time, a benefit or whatever. And as soon as the people that they show up 5 minutes before their slot time and they leave as soon as they're done. And 9 times out of 10, those are the ones that are complaining when somebody else gets a leg up and they don't. And I don't know what it is about networking that people hear the word and they get all freaked out. But you heard about the game, The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yep.
That's a real thing, right? I had a gentleman today by the name of Paul Morris. He told this great story. He went and saw Peter Gabriel in Toronto a couple nights ago. And he had a post about seeing Steve Nagus getting his tickets from Todd Zuckerman, who plays drums and sticks, who knows Tony Levin, who's playing bass with Peter Gabriel. That's not even, follow that. That's not even 6 degrees. That's about 3.5, maybe 4.
That's quite the thread.
Right? So it's everybody has a mechanic, everybody has a doctor, a dentist, whatever, and it's like those are the people that will lead you to other people. It's so easy, and people make it so difficult.
Yeah, this article quotes excuse number 2. Here's a second one, is that many of the bands have friends who want to see them and talk to them after they perform, so I don't want to get in the way.
Yeah, that's kind of lame.
It is. I mean, but these are the things that were quoted, and apparently when this went to press, it got a whole lot more attention when it on social media when it went to press, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, you know, and I guess that's the thing, right? Here's the other thing. The one excuse was the need to load and unload gear after performing.
Written by no bass player ever. I'm just saying, but I don't know. You can take 5 minutes. I mean, I've been in bands where the second the last stud of the last song of the night is done, guys are wrapping cables. Um, if people take the time to go see you, spend a couple minutes, man. Um, Thank them, buy them a beer, tell them how to get merch. Like it's just I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think that that just being there, supporting a fellow artist, and also you know looking at the progress that they're making as an artist, I think is really important as well.
Yep.
And recognize it and providing that critical feedback to people. You had a post up there today about Neil Peart,
Yep.
right? And some guy posted up about Neil, and then somebody had to go on there and start trashing it by saying, well, there's a whole lot of better metal drummers than Neil, blah 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 blah, and it, it's just a perfect example of how people can't support somebody else's idea about something.
I agree with that. When it comes to open mindedness and music, anybody that knows me knows my mind is closed. I like what I like. It's hard for me to embrace other stuff.
Right.
However, I will go and support whatever because if somebody has the stones to get up in front of people and play or release their material to the world, it doesn't matter what I think. It's irrelevant what I think. What I know is I need to support them, especially with what I'm doing. And the problem is, to me, is that people, again, they're worried about somebody else leapfrogging them, becoming more successful. Um, but Gene Simmons, we keep quoting Gene Simmons. He always talked about it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And at different points of time in the race in a marathon, somebody's further ahead than somebody else. It's where you finish, man. And people just don't get that part of it. They just don't get that part of it. Here's a good example. The band, the Fabulous Pontoona Brothers, are good buddies of mine from right here. They're a great band. I support them every time I get. I wear their shirts. Try to go to their shows. I booked them on a show that I did. Somebody said to me, "Why do you support them so much?" Because they ask, they support other people. It's really simple.
Yeah, and the networking thing is a big deal. I mean, I think what always meant the most to me taking in live shows was when band members would come out and talk to people in between
Yep.
sets in the club and thank them for coming out to the gig. First and foremost, thanking them for coming out to the gig, and then making some small talk.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up in an era where we had an agent where he always told us, "I don't want you guys coming out of the dressing room in between sets." He wanted this aura about the band, like we were almost like untouchable or unattainable. And then you're done and game on. You talk to whoever you want. I
Right.
kind of get that, but in this day and age, I mean, you're in a second by second, click by click kind of environment now, right? So if you're doing something to impede your progress, you better know that somebody else is doing something to make sure their progress is going forward, and people miss that.
Well, here's the interesting thing too. I mean, you talk about people and how they support one another and how they sort of network, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I keep going back to bands that I know that did really, really well back in the day by networking with people and talking to people. And, bands like Helix, for example, who sold 10,000 records by networking with people at their shows and selling their records to the shows. I mean, they're taking armfuls of records and literally, if you were in the club, you were talking to somebody, you try and sell them a record, and if you weren't doing that, when they changed the smoking laws where you were smoking outside, you're out in the parking lot with an armful of albums trying to sell them out there to your fans.
Funny how it works. So last Wednesday night, I went to Steel Panther here in Halifax. I went to the meet and greet, and I was waiting to get in, and there was 7 people. There was one guy that I knew, and there was 7 other people I had never met before that I was talking to. Turned out they live within 10 minutes of where I live, and hey, you know what? They joined the page. They're going to come out to some future shows, and all it was, hey, how you doing? Uh, where are you from? And people, I think, they take the networking piece and automatically think they got to close a sale, and they get all messed up and jumbled up. And things are too easy for people these days, right? You can do everything online. You don't get a knock on the door or pick up a phone or whatever. And networking is not a hard thing. It's take Brent as a good example. I mean, love that guy to death, and I met him through you, right?
Right.
But I met you through Greg, and you and I start doing some stuff, and all of a sudden, boom, there's Brent, and talk to the guy quite a bit. So I mean, it's just don't confuse sales with networking because they're not the same thing.
No, they're very, very much. They're much, much different. I mean, there's lots of stuff that you're doing in that whole networking process. So that networking process isn't always about sales.
Right.
In fact, what we talked about last time when we had Michael on the show, he talked about how important networking is for artists to do, and we wish that more artists were watching the show, so they would get that grasp, that whole concept of the fact that if you're not interacting with your fan base on social media on a regular basis about even the most mundane things, right? I mean, here is something for you to think about and really think about it long and hard, because people just don't want the sales pitch all the time. Hey, buy our music, come to our shows. They want to interact with you, and the only people they can interact with is the band. It's not the record label, it's not the promotion company, it's not your tour manager, it's not whoever. It's going to interact with the fan. They want to interact with you, and they want to learn more about you. I mean, some of the stuff I see people doing now, short videos, talk about that whole thing about Kevin Bacon and the reels that him and his wife are doing now.
Right.
It's a whole nother way for them to reach out to a fan base.
Well, and you brought up something interesting. So independent artists. So think about this platform for a second. We have Michael Brandvold on every 6 weeks.
Yep, at least.
So somebody says to me the other day, "Oh, how did you get? Literally, you're lucky that you're talking to Michael Brandvold." Well, no, I'm not. I reached out to him. I interviewed him. I said to Ken he'd be a good guest. Ken talked to him. Here he is. You can get it every 6 weeks. Where were you? You weren't there. You're telling me I'm lucky, but you can come on. You can watch us. You can type a question. Michael will answer it.
Michael is becoming a really good friend, and like after our last show, you see the message you sent us about how much he loves talking to us. Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the cool thing. It's like 3 friends getting together, talking about music, their love of music, and also talking about what it takes to network. And if artists really understood the whole part of networking, it's not just about the sale. Okay, that should be the last thing on your mind. If you don't engage your fans, how are they going to be interested in what you're doing?
Man, oh man, if you network properly, the sale takes care of itself, and people need to understand that.
I see my job as as a record label owner to make sure the music is out there where people can find it, and that it's accessible, right? It really ends up being the person that owns the product whose job it is to sell it.
Absolutely. No question, 100%. And I mean, that's another topic. I get into that topic with people around here where, it's the club's responsibility to promote. Well, okay. But if the club doesn't and you don't, nobody shows up or whatever, then whose fault is that? Who do we blame there? So
Right.
it's it's a weird time in that there's so many different ways you can get your message out, yet people seem to be getting worse and worse at it. It's strange
Yeah,
to me.
I mean, it's not, it's the whole same other thing with ticket sales. I mean, if you look at ticket sales like Ticketmaster and all those other companies out there that are selling tickets, they're not doing anything to draw the fans to the show.
Nope.
The fans are drawn to the show because of the band,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And because of the way that the band interacts with fans. I mean, look at all the stuff that we're gonna be. We got front row seats to see Metallica
Nice.
in November in Detroit in Ford Field, and I like what they've been doing. Have you seen all their reels, the stuff that they do, and the fan interaction stuff that's going on?
They're great. And I mean, I've told this story about Lars Ulrich. I've met him on 4 different occasions. He's been consistent every 4 times. I'll leave it up to you whether I thought he was good or not. But that being said, those guys are masters at it, right? I mean, like, even if you get into their story back when they were a little band in San Francisco in the early 80s, they were doing the tape swapping things and they were doing t-shirts and posters and they got it. But they were following their heroes over in the UK, like Iron Maiden and Motorhead and Saxon and all these guys that were doing it. And I see the other thing too that I don't get, man, is just like people are doing it. If somebody's doing it successfully, go and find out how it's working for them. Ask some questions and just try to repeat it in your own way. You're not splitting the atom. You're not splitting the atom, right?
No, and there's a whole lot of different ways to go about networking with your fans or your would-be fans. One of those things is to do interesting reels, to put
Mhm.
out a reel. I challenge artists to start putting out reels about the band and the guys in the band and what they do, what you do. I mean, if you got a day job, do a short reel talking about what you do outside of music or what your hobbies are outside of music. Some people like to cook, some people like to barbecue. I mean, do a short, 45-second reel on barbecue and ribs.
So early days of bar stools when we were allowed to go out, and it's so funny how this whole people are getting all wound up about the whole mandates and all this thing again. But when we were allowed to go out, we went to downtown Halifax, and a friend of mine who's a busker had some, it was like buckets but they were bucket drums. So he was playing guitar, and I played his buckets, and he was singing rock and roll all night. It was a 20-second clip that got almost 800 views within 10 minutes. And it was
Yeah.
because it was so incredibly stupid, but it's so incredibly interactive. It was live and people could give us feedback right away. And again, you don't have to make Apocalypse Now. You know what I mean? You can do it so easily.
Exactly. I mean, there's a whole lot of different things that you can do that are really cool that engage people and get people, watching what you're doing or interested in what you're doing. And then, you can do the soft sell on your music. You don't have to do the hard sell on it at all.
No, absolutely. And I
You
mean,
know?
I don't think a friend of mine had a thing the other day. Oh, I don't want to get people mad at me for posting too much. Well, can you post too much? Because I mean, every other thing that comes up on your phone is some ridiculously stupid video on, some girl eating ice cream and burping or some guy, doing something silly. So I mean, if they're doing it and they're getting views, if you're proud of something, do it, man. Like who cares? Like, people will choose. Don't make the choice. Let people choose themselves. Don't do it for them.
I gotta share something here.
Yeah.
If I can find this. Here it is right here. I'm gonna share this right now. Hopefully it hits share. There it is. You see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a funny
Go ahead.
story. There's a funny story behind that.
Sure.
So you go up and you wait to get your picture. And anyway, so the drummer was patting me on the back, and what he was I saw your Mick Brown interview. Good job, bro. And he was patting me on the back because he saw the interview on Rimshots.
Right.
Anyway, the guy before me brought his girlfriend up, and she was dressed like scantily clad. Anyway, and the knowing Steel Panther, the singer's looking at her, and the other guy's going, "Remember the lawsuit? We still have the lawsuit." And he was joking around. I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, guys, I guess I'm out of here in 30 seconds. I didn't bring one of those with me. I'm sorry, right? So it was just that. But again, previous to that, the guy that shot that video is a friend of mine. And the guy that was in front of me was the guy that I had never met before. That within 2 minutes, I made a friend that's going to come out and support me now. So it's not hard. It's not
No,
hard.
and it can be a lot of fun too. I mean, it can be a lot of fun in that as well. Anyways, I mean, this journalist really thought it was important to sort of post about this, and I thought it was an interesting article, even though it's a bit dated. There's some really cool thoughts and ideas about that. Um, you know, it's interesting how people can come up with excuses about why they won't or can't support somebody else. And I really just hope it doesn't boil down to jealousy. I really hope it doesn't boil down to that.
In some cases, I believe it does. And I've talked to, I don't know how many people I've talked to who, certain friends of mine have product endorsements. I have a product endorsement for different things, and it's like he's lucky. Well, no, he's not lucky. He did the work to get there. He represents. Like again, I'm going to get in this whole universal sort of mindset. I got to watch myself. I don't believe in luck because luck to me means that there's some being that's somewhere that says, "Oh, you got luck." No, no, no. If you think about anybody that's been successful, there's been work involved, right?
Yeah, there's always a work involved in that, and sometimes it's like you said to me. You and I had this conversation about, sometimes we'll set something up, and a guest might cancel for whatever reason. We sometimes don't even know what the reasons are,
Yep.
and then you quickly reminded me about David Letterman, how he had like big shot guests who were constantly canceling on him until he became a household name, and then everybody was begging to be on his show.
And then it comes around. You know what? Can't get you on this. And I mean, it's really funny because and I got to watch how I say this, but a lot of people, and I don't know if it's confidence, I don't know if they're not in a position where they can get around certain people. But a lot of people live vicariously through other people. It's just what the media feeds you. It's what social media feeds you. So by that, they tend to gravitate towards people that they think mean something, right? So if it's Ken and Sean doing something on downtown a street in downtown Halifax, and it's doing okay, then the Trailer Park Boys show up, right? And I don't take that as a slight. I take it as okay. You know what? They did the work. Sure, they're more popular, but guess what? We're just as relevant because we're doing something that's important to somebody. You can't. You can't. I guess. You got to be good with the way people think because they're always gravitating to that which they think is bigger than them, and that's just human nature.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's this whole thing of finding a way. I mean, you can always find a different way to support people. It doesn't always have to be that whole come out to their show thing. Maybe they're posting about their show, and you might reshare their post.
Well, and it's funny because I'll get a lot of people that are like, I can't believe you shared that drummer's video. That why are you doing that? Well, A, because I thought it was good. B, he deserves to be shared. C, I'm not intimidated because I do
Yeah.
my own thing. And it's just I don't get it because it's like maybe that share that's shared from your page is seen by somebody that you don't know that can lead you down a path that you never would have gotten to before. Right?
I mean, I could get all whiny and go, you know what? I mean, I got like, I don't know, thousands of people that follow me on social media,
Yeah.
and yet that number never comes close to the views that we get when we do the show. That number never come. I wish it did. But even if those people took the show and shared it out to somebody else who might be interested in what we're talking about, it could bring in that one or two more organic fans. To me, this is about building things one fan at a time. It's not about, a popularity contest.
No, for sure. And I mean, I'm friends with Matt Starr, so we're going to try to get Matt on the show. And Matt's played with Ace Frehley and Mr. Big, and so he does a live thing. He's also a coach, and he does all kinds of things. If Matt was at all intimidated about his ability or where he was in the universe, he wouldn't do any of that.
No, of course not.
But he goes on a regular basis and tries to help people become successful. He had one today, and it was basically know your worth. Your rate's too low, up your rate. And people are going, what do you mean up your rate? And Matt's like, if you're getting the same rate and you up it and you lose those gigs, well, those gigs sucked. And you're going to get better gigs. And it's just like, okay. But again, this is a guy that's done it, right? People, and it's a networking thing because Matt talks about networking a lot too, right? I would wager if you and I got together with Brent, we'd sit down over a beer, we'd have a couple of conversations, and I guarantee you we at least know 5 of the same people.
Oh, probably.
Right? So if
Yep.
I went, hey, Ken, the 5 people that you know, who do they know? And it's almost like a network marketing thing. You start planning it out, the bubbles start going like this. And again, I don't know why it is. People, they know people, but when it comes to talking to people to kind of further their own thing, they feel weird about it.
Yeah, it's funny how that can go. People are sometimes people are fearful of the networking piece of it.
Yep.
And yet some people have this, like a lot of bands on my label, for example, have, upwards of, 2 or 3,000 followers across social media. And I don't see much engagement, to be honest. And I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying I don't see the kind of engagement that I think is good organic engagement between you and your fans, right? If you're going to have, 1,700 people follow you and they just like you, well, liking is not the same as being an engaged follower,
No, no. And
right?
I can tell you just from my numbers on Barstools when I pull them up, our engagement is always through the roof because there's always something on the go that gets somebody. And it might be like we went and saw Steel Panther. The band that opened for them last week was a band called Broken Love.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, I was just like, the opener. These guys absolutely knocked my socks off. They were incredible. I went on. I talked to them. We're going to get them on the show. But 4 people picked up on my post, and all of a sudden, I got 27 followers in one day because of that one post about that band and how much they love the band.
Yeah, and they're probably one of these bands that you're like, oh man, I wish I could see them for a whole evening.
Fantastic.
And see what they got for a whole show, and yet they were an opener.
Right. And look at me, folks. Do I look smarter than any of you guys? No. But I do know this. People like what they like. They like to talk about themselves. And if you can figure out how to get what they like on there and talk about them, they will get your message out there. And that's the way it goes.
Okay, so I finally, I'm really, really, really. Here's the whole thing. Brent and I are always talking about stuff, right, back and forth. And I was talking to him on the phone before the show tonight. He says on here, I just bought my first smartphone. As soon as I learn to use it, I can start making reels for Facebook, and he will. Like he totally will, and I like that whole aspect. I mean, I did the same thing with Brian Vollmer, right? And now Brian's doing reels all the time, right?
So Brent will probably know this gentleman, Ron Mayer. So Ron was the bass player in Killer Dwarfs back in the Stand Tall days. Ron's actually from out here.
Okay.
Lives in the Buffalo area now. He's a member of Barstools. I'm a friend of him. Ron's got a flip phone. And every time he posts something, it's like he's yelling because it's all caps. And we always joke around with him with it. So, hey, Brent, you're ahead of Ron. That's awesome. But even still, Brent didn't use not having a smartphone as an excuse to, push his band out there. I hear that a lot. Oh, I don't have the technology. Well, I started Barstools on an iPhone 7, I kid you not. And I had a bunch of people, I don't like this, I don't like that. I don't care. It's what I got.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too. I mean, here's the other thing is that, I really push on people about making sure that you have, if you're going to have a social media account anywhere, you should definitely have it on Facebook. You should have it on Instagram. You should have it on X, which is the old Twitter format. And the reason why Twitter is really important is because it's an e-commerce platform,
Yep.
right? And people don't understand the importance of that. So almost all radio out there that's going to play your music is going to put a shout out on the X platform that they're playing your music. And you bloody well better pick up your phone and retweet that. Because if you don't, your music could be short-lived on their station, because it's one of the ways that you help promote them on an e-commerce platform,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And they're not likely going to post that on Facebook, and they're not likely going to post it on Instagram, because Facebook and Instagram are not e-commerce platforms.
No, we used to go through this with when I was in minor hockey, where the God love the group that was running one of the biggest tournaments in North America, but they were I was the youngest person on the board, and I was in my 40s at the time, right?
Right.
So, and they were like Facebook, Facebook, and they had this young guy. Nobody goes to Facebook, but his point was, yes, put it on Facebook, but get the other platforms, because if you want to get the younger people and the Gen Xers, and you got to use all the platforms. And Linktree is a great way to, and this isn't a paid advertisement, but something like a Linktree or whatever to put everything together is a good way to be able to do this, because I know it takes a lot of time, man. I
Yeah.
know I know it takes a lot of time to do this. I live it every day.
Now,
But
are you using Linktree yourself?
I am, yes.
You're gonna. I may have to get a tutorial from you on that, because I really do want to link everything on Linktree, because it does seem to be the way to go if you really want to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing is you can pick your platform that you want to blast things out, and you just hook everything together, and it just goes out by the Linktree platform.
Right.
Um, and I mean, one of the other ones that I was like, TikTok, really, like, do I need to see one more? But TikTok is one of those ones. So I've got a very good friend of mine out here, Nicole Belfontaine. So Nicole Belfontaine has the #1 afternoon radio show in the Halifax area. She's
Right.
amazing. Go look her up. She's a TikTok queen. She did, so check this out. She did a video yesterday. Go find it. It's on Barstools and Band Talk. Somebody sent a text to her coworker, basically telling her coworker to go after yourself. And Nicole, being in the media, they put up with all this bullying and stuff all the time. She went on there and basically did a TikTok video that went crazy about, how dare you? You just think because you listen, and it was amazing. She does these all the time, and it's not like the combative ones, but she'll just be in the studio and she'll do it, and all of a sudden she's got 50 people that are watching her silly little video that takes 30 seconds.
Yep.
It's networking.
Yeah, and the cool thing about networking, I mean, there's different kinds of ways to network. You can do a lot of networking on social media, for example. And I'm quickly looking through here at my latest, so tonight, up until tonight, you and I, between the two of us, I think we rendered something like 500 views on our reels. And I stopped posting short videos on my profile pages quite a while ago, and I started just doing everything to promo the show using reels,
Yeah.
and anything associated with the record label doing reels. And some of my reels are getting thousands of views now. Some of them are in the hundreds, but it's reaching far more people than I was reaching before. And every once in a while, I'll get a notification. So and so just started following you.
Yep.
So and so just started following, and so the cool thing about it is it's a great way to pick up organic followers who go, "Hey, I really like what that guy's doing. I'm gonna check it out some more." Right?
You just keep swinging. Like, think about this for a second. And I'm not a baseball fan, but the difference between a 400 hitter making $10 million a year and a 300 hitter making 500,000 is one more hit per 10 at bats. Think about that for a second. So the other guy
Exactly.
keeps swinging, man, and he just keeps. And Michael talked about this. Forget about the views. I'm not gonna lie. I'll sit here and just get savage about. I joke around about the potato chip that looks like Richard Nixon. Then I found a seriously, but I found a story about some guy in New Brunswick that made a crop art in a field somewhere in New Brunswick, and it was a face of Gordon Lightfoot and Stan Rogers, and it got like 100,000. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But to Michael's point, you just got to throw it out there, and the numbers just whatever they are, they are, and they'll be what they'll be.
Exactly. Listen, we were talking about album art tonight before the show, and here's some interesting stuff. So I wanna focus on a couple of things. So this one comes from Billboard, and who do you think that Billboard named best album cover? Who do you think that Billboard would have named best album cover
Of all time?
of all time?
I know who it should be, but it probably won't be. It's probably going to be somebody in a genre that I'm not really dialed into. I don't know.
Okay, well we'll get to it. So here's one here. Have you seen that one?
Yep.
Okay. The Velvet Underground and Nico.
It's the number one of all time.
Number one of all time. That's what Billboard says, number one of all time. Of course, number two is the Beatles' Abbey Road.
Yep.
Is that a surprise?
No, because you know what? Here, think about this. Anybody that's ever gone over to the Abbey Road studios, what do? They get their picture taken on that crosswalk, right?
So this was the album cover that sparked the whole rumor that Paul McCartney was actually dead.
Right, because it didn't look like him or something.
Well, not only that it didn't look like him, but here's the whole other part about this whole album cover. So, do you remember in one of the I can't remember the song, but they actually say that the words "Paul is dead."
Yeah.
Okay, but look at Paul's feet. He's wearing bare feet in a suit, right?
Yeah.
Dead men get buried in suits, and they don't have shoes on.
Well, there you go.
Right. So that was where that whole sort of rumor came from. We'll go a little bit further. It's Patti Smith's Horses, 1975. There's a cool album cover.
Pretty cool, yeah.
Very stark, black and white, very simple, but just some great attitude on her face there, right?
Yeah, and she's a legend, absolutely.
We'll go down one more here. This is Ready to Die, the Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah. Okay.
How about this one?
Yeah, classic.
Everybody knows that one, right?
You know what's classic about that too is the Hindenburg actually flew over Halifax before that happened.
And this one here, everybody knows that one.
Iconic.
The Dark Side of the Moon album. So we're gonna go a couple more here, and I'm gonna flip back over here, and I want to share another screen in a second here. It'll be. So this one, that was from Billboard's ideas about the number one album covers. And we're going to go now to the Rolling Stone Readers Poll. Okay. And here's what is shared on the Readers Poll. Hang on a second here. I'm going to make sure I down to number one. So this is the number one here, and I'm going to flip it there right now. There it is.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
So, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. The interesting thing is about how the Beatles are repeated right here.
Yeah, so I mean, like something like that. It was interesting you bring that record up because I was reading something today with that Lennon talked about where he basically said he thought the White Album was better than Sgt. Pepper because Paul didn't like the White Album, and John was like he didn't like the White Album because it wasn't a Paul McCartney album. Everybody had two, and it was a shot at Paul, obviously. But the thing about that album, it doesn't matter who you are, well, how old you are, you know exactly who it is.
Exactly. So here's another one. That was the number one rated. Here's number two. Of course,
Yep.
Dark Side of the Moon comes up there as number two.
Yep.
Now, again, this is a fan poll, right?
Yeah.
Our readers poll, and then this one here.
Yeah, whatever. I was like, Nirvana was the sound of the first phase of my music career dying. They get nothing from me. I'm sorry.
So, do you know the name Spencer Eldon?
That's not the kid that was suing them about that picture, was it?
That's right. He sued him about the picture, and he claimed that the image of him naked on the 1991 album constituted child sexual abuse. Now, that is one of the most shared album covers of all time.
Huh. It's fun. It is funny how some of that stuff is coming back to haunt people. There's no question.
It's crazy. But anyways, he did lose the lawsuit. He did not win the lawsuit, which was probably bad for him, good thing for everybody else concerned, right? Here is number 4. Of course, that comes up again
Yep.
in the top 10. And then The Clash, London Calling.
Interesting.
Interesting album cover itself. I mean, today that album cover would probably get rejected on streaming services because it's blurred.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we, Ken?
There's another cool one.
Yeah, yeah.
Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And then Revolver. That's a cool album cover as well.
Very cool.
Very psychedelic in a sense too, right?
Yep.
I'm sure that, Lennon was on a trip when they made that album cover. And then there's another great album cover right there.
So, something like that to me, I wish I could. I'll try to find the picture, but a shot like that's a moment in time that winds up being so iconic is just so cool, right? Because
that actually made it on the cover of the Rolling Stone as well.
100%. You see that, and it's just like, man, he's badass. He's young. He's hungry. Just a cool looking picture, right?
That's another cool album cover as well.
Oh yeah.
The Wish You Were Here album cover was another great album cover. It was probably one of the reasons I bought that album, aside from the fact I knew there'd be great music inside it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol comes back up again.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. But anyway,
I don't get it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me either. But we're just a couple of normal guys.
Well, I mean, if you want the yin to the yang, there's a Facebook site, Bad Album Covers Collectibles.
Right.
It's pretty funny. You can find little ones like this. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, I see that one.
Yeah, laid by the Lord. Anyway, bad. But my point is, people remember good, they remember bad, and it's you know what? Every one of those, it's funny because you take the fans, and the fans are like, cool. I can appreciate somebody offering their opinion. The other one that you put up, the billboard, that to me kind of seems a little bit more, they put the bifocals down like this, and you gotta, you know what I mean? Like,
it's kind of like what?
Yeah.
So here's something that I started reading. I really enjoying this. I'm going to put myself on the camera so I can show you this here. You see
yes,
that?
Yeah.
Traveling Music by Neil Peart. Great read, man. I love his writing. He's got a different approach to writing, and the guy was well read. I mean, read a ton of books.
I don't know if we're ever going to see a guy and this is, I think, what got me wound up about this guy jumping on talking about, metal drummers. I don't know if we're ever going to see a guy again that was that talented behind a drum kit, that was so brilliant I mean, I love watching interviews with Neil Peart because it just seems like everything he says is so well thought out, so well articulated. And I wasn't even a huge Neil Peart fan growing up. He's a guy that I obviously knew was amazing, but I came to appreciate his intellect. I came to appreciate the fact that it just seemed like everything he did in life is the way he played drums. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and yet here's a guy who also knew great loss.
100%.
I mean, he lost his wife, or sorry, in this order, he lost his daughter, who was 19 years old.
Yeah.
He lost his wife in that same year. He lost his dog. He lost his best friend, all in that one same year. I mean, if that doesn't scream out to you, going, what next? I mean, what next, right?
Well, a classic example of, okay, so what do? Do you sit there and feel sorry for yourself and say, I'm going to call it a day? Or do you take a little bit of time? And that's what he did. And he came roaring back. I mean, that album that he did, after all that happened, they had the music recorded. He went and he did the drums to the actual recorded parts. And there was some brilliant stuff, right?
Yeah, and I remember reading I'm trying to think of which book it is book it is right. It might be in Ghost Rider, where he talks about after his daughter's gone, his wife's gone, his best friend's gone, the dog's gone. He's at home. It's a late fall night. He's in Quebec, in the
hmm
place they live in Quebec, and it's raining. And he gets on his motorcycle, loads up his motorcycle, and he takes off, and he ends up in all places, Alaska. Right? He rides his motorcycle all the way across the country to Alaska, and then all the way down the coast to Belize.
hmm
And while he's doing that motorcycle riding, it's that whole it's a point of self-discovery again, and how he reinvents himself. Because
Yeah.
you suffer those major losses. Here's a way of reinventing yourself. And I say this as an encouragement to bands that have lost major members of their band along the way and have considered folding the band,
Yeah.
right? Because that can be one of those things that causes the death of an artist.
For sure. And I mean, so the Neil Peart line about my drumming is like jogging and doing arithmetic is brilliant. But my favorite Neil Peart line of all time, and I think if anybody is ever struggling with playing and playing in pain and whatever, and he decided he was going to hang it up and go see the documentary, and they're like, oh well, Charlie Watts is still 70 and he's playing, and Neil's like, yes, but Charlie Watts can play Charlie Watts parts at 70. Neil Peart can, and it was just like bang on. And there was another funny story. He talked about possibly coming back. And he said he took his daughter to school, and she said, this is my dad, he's an ex-drummer, and he knew he was done. Like, just stuff like that made the guy brilliant, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how people can put a different spin on their lives through the adversity that comes along. There's been a lot of good things that have come out of adversity over time for artists. You know, Brent's whole adventure into the world of making solo albums, for example, under My Wicked Twin,
hmm
was born out of some levels of change in his life, and things that he liked or didn't like about touring, or liked or didn't like about being in a band. And it took him in a whole bunch of different directions, but when it was all said and done, he's back making music again.
I had this discussion with Jason McCorson, who's my producer on Barstools, and we were texting back and forth about Michelle's album and stuff. And I asked him, he had a gig on Saturday night, and I asked him how it went. And a couple things were good, and a couple things he didn't like. And his point was, it's frustrating sometimes because people see things a certain way and want it to be that way, and it's really not. And what he was kind of equating it to was, people don't have the whole story. They don't know what's going on. So for a guy like Brent, why the heck would Brent quit Helix? Well, you don't know. You don't know that maybe he didn't want to tour anymore. Maybe he's having way more enjoyment doing his own thing. So you gotta just let people do their thing and not get caught up in that whole silly little back door of when you don't know what's going on, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to take a look at. Greg Sinclair says, sounds like a war within.
Yeah.
Interesting, because that's one of their songs off of the off their album, off War and Sin.
Which is a great album. Which, if Greg noticed, I was wearing my War and Sin hoodie when I met Steel Panther. So that went all across North America. Just saying.
Yeah, you know what, I got a bone to pick about that. Did you have to pay for that?
I'm not. I pay for everything.
I
we were
want some swag. I wanted some War and Sin swag. I didn't get any.
um, we were talking about album covers. I just want to pick out. We brought the Springsteen thing up in a moment in time. So I was telling you my buddy Alan Zolkowski. So Alan shoots for Motley Crue, for Kiss. He does Rock to Harbor. He does Honeymoon Suite on a regular basis. Derby Mills, a whole shooting match. We were opening for Haywire. And I don't know if people can see this, but Alan captured this. And it was I knew he was doing it, but I actually saw him after the shot was taken. So this was before. And my point is, that's a moment in time that for me, I would put that up. And it's not the subject in the picture, but it's the picture itself. That's a badass picture that I would put up. And that's what passionate people do when they're coming up with album covers and all those things. So any of those albums that wound up in the top 100, I think, are worthy because somebody put their thought into it.
What do you think of that photo?
There you go, Mr. Steven Ruxin right there.
And that is going to be coming out soon. We're going to be announcing a drop date for Hurt's Gonna Come by Michelle Ryder. That's going to be coming out soon. We've got a bunch of new music that's coming out this month on the label. We've got a song called Butterfly Lullaby by He Said, She Said, and a video that's going to come out on Sunday night. This Sunday night. So check that out. It's a pretty cool video. It's got some kid actors in it. And it was shot by members of the artists themselves, and they put the video together. It's really well done. I think it's well done. And hopefully people will watch that on our YouTube channel. And by the way, where you at Barstools and Band Talk Rim Shots with Sean and Indie Tunes Records, we're always looking for new subscribers on our YouTube channels. So check us out on YouTube and subscribe to our channels. You get notifications that way. You can sign up for notifications and know when we're posting new videos, when we're going live, all that cool stuff. So a great opportunity for you to get to know us a little bit more and get to know all the cool people that we have on the show.
A friend of mine likes to say it's free and it takes you less time than going through a Tim Hortons drive-through, and that is the honest to goodness truth.
That's right. And once you get home from the drive-through, you can sit and sip your Tim Hortons coffee and watch the show, because you can watch it on instant replay on several different platforms, because we broadcast simultaneously on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Twitter, which is now X. And so you can catch it on any of those platforms. So please do that. We certainly appreciate it. And if you like what we're doing, hit the like button down there. You can always click the tip jar too. If you like what we're doing, there's a tip jar right there above my finger over there. And we got a cool guest coming on the show next week.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Should we say who it is? Because we have.
Oh, I want you to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, so a number of months ago, so my show basically, I get my guest ideas from people that ask me to have people on, and sometimes there's been challenges. So one of my members was like, you got to get Leland Sklar. Anybody knows Leland Sklar? He plays bass with Phil Collins, James Taylor, Toto. He's a dude that's got the beard that's like down to his waistline. He's an amazing dude. We got him. We put him on there. He was amazing. Lorraine Lewis, who's the lead singer of Vixen, who replaced Janet Gardner. She was very sought after. A number of months ago, I reached out to her, and she's like, sure, I'll come on your show. So she came on. She was a hoot. She's also a very successful businesswoman as well as singer in that band. She has a production company that she does movies and TV. She had a show called The Ex-Wives of Rock that featured ex-wives of members of Warrant and Motley Crue and what have you. So Lorraine's going to be on next week, and I promise you, she's awesome. She's hilarious. She pulls no punches.
Isn't she best buds too with Vince Neil's ex-wife too?
Therese Neal, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, so Lorraine Lewis on the show next week. She sounds like a lovely person. If you haven't ever seen her perform live, you can watch their live performance this past July at Wacken, which is one of the largest festivals, probably the largest festival over in Europe. And they actually for a long time were one of the leaders. Vixen were one of the leaders in the whole glam metal scene.
They were, and get it out of your head that they're good players for girls. They're good players, period.
Yeah.
And they could shred any dude's laundry anytime they want in terms of chops. I mean, they're. I've always loved them. They're still out there doing it, man. They play, I think, 4 or 5 times a month. Huge crowds, and they work hard. And Lorraine is a hoot. You guys will love that show.
Yeah. So it's going to be great to have Lorraine on the show, and then probably I'm thinking sometime later next month we're going to be having Michael Brandvold back on the show. Michael said once he gets things settled down in his new digs in San Francisco that he's probably going to come on as a monthly guest, which would be so much fun. That guy knows. He's forgotten more stuff than I think Sean and I will ever know in terms of the world of music and music business in itself. And this is a guy who picks up clients on an ongoing basis, and I'm talking heavy hitter clients, because of word of mouth and the fact that Michael has built a really great reputation for himself.
He has, and the thing that I like about Michael is he's not afraid when somebody rips him. So there was a thing today where it was he had a post on the Three Sides page, and it was, "Are Kiss fans the most annoying or aggressive?" And it was somebody basically ripping Michael Brandvold, and the whole thread was, it started, "Oh, that's not," and by the end of it, it was like, "Oh my god, you guys are just silly." And Michael posted it because his point was, this is like, and I'm a big believer in this too. Turning off comments or not allowing people to comment, that's a version of censorship. And hey, if you're going to comment, cool, but be prepared to go back and forth.
Can you read this comment here, Sean? We're going to be winding up the show here shortly, but can you read that show there or that post?
So I interviewed Alfie. I have a funny story about Mr. Pupo that I can't tell on here. But I interviewed Alfie. Possibly, yeah, we could probably get him on again. I can't dial it up right now, but I get his number in my phone, not to drop names, so I could probably gear something up.
Well, it'd be fun to have him on the show. That'd be really, really cool if we could do that.
He's a wonderful man. He's very funny. He's very engaging. And a lot of people don't know this. He is I'll call him the original jam guy. So he basically has a group of people across the country that he calls. So he'll go to Montreal and he uses these guys. He goes to Halifax, he uses these guys, and it's all charts, right? So it's like, here's what I'm doing. There's no rehearsal. Show up, be ready, and he pulls it off every time. And he's the real deal, man.
Yeah, and a couple of other guys that we're working on getting on the show. Sean Kelly, we're looking at getting Sean on the show. Mm-hmm. Sean played not too long ago in the productions, all those productions in Toronto, for the, what is it?
The Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages, that's right, and of course tours with Lee Aaron, and a bunch of other. Coney Hatch. Plays guitar for a lot of different artists. And as well, we're also looking at having Daryl Miller on from
Daryl's awesome.
from the Killer Dwarfs.
Love
so I got to hit him up again because not long ago, of course, Daryl lost his mom, mm-hmm. and that was a tough loss for him. And the band is still playing; they're out there doing their thing still, and so we're going to try and get Daryl on the show. It should be fun to have him on the show. That would be a killer show, I'm sure.
Daryl's one of my favorite people. I did a show where I had him and Barry Connors from Toronto on, and it was the first time in 4 years that they had talked to each other, and it was a hoot. But Daryl, for starters, he's no dwarf. He's a big boy. But go check out his socials. He's got a really hilarious thing he does. He calls it Drum Face Friday, where he posts pictures of himself playing, and then he encourages other people to post their own drum faces. Daryl is hilarious, man. He's just a super nice guy.
That's awesome. So we got to have him on the show as well. But next week, you're going to want to catch the show here, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, with our special guest, Lorraine Lewis from Vixen. You're not going to want to miss that. Sean, little plug for Barstools and Band Talk.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up. Thanks for that. We have, I actually, when I was over in Dublin, we have a piece that we're putting together right now. It's all the kind of the best of videos that will be for Barstools and Eastlink TV. Lots of shows coming up, working on some promotion stuff. If you want somebody on the show, I always say, send it to me. And if they're on there, it's because I said yes. If they're not on there, it's not because I didn't try. And I'll just leave it at that.
That's right. So you can also send your request to the Indie Show as well. and let us know if there's somebody you want us to get on the show. We'd love to help you out that way and hopefully bring in some more viewers. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I am Kenny from Tunes Records. Where is he? He's that guy. Sean from Bars, Tools, and Band Talk. Rim Shots with Sean. Thanks for joining me tonight. I am Kenny, and you are not. Have a good